You know, a low appraisal can stop a deal completely dead in its tracks. It's got to be one of the most stressful moments in any transaction. But what if? What if you were actually prepared for it weeks, even months in advance?
Okay, just picture this for a second. The call comes in, the appraisal just came in $15,000 below the contract price. The lender won't fund the gap, and the seller won't drop the price. You have 72 hours. And here's the kicker. Everything, and I mean everything, depends on what you documented 6 weeks ago when you first priced this listing. The clock is ticking, the pressure's on, and your deal is just hanging by a thread.
So, what happens now? What do you do? Do you panic? Do you scramble? Or do you just calmly open a file you prepared over a month ago? The choice you make right here, well, that could be the difference between a closed deal and a completely collapsed one.
Now, the reality is, this scenario isn't some rare fluke. It's a really widespread issue, and it's caused by this fundamental documentation gap that, honestly, leaves most agents totally defenseless when it comes to their pricing.
And when I say widespread, I mean it. The scale of this problem is pretty staggering. In 2025, 18% of transactions faced appraisal gaps. Think about that. That's nearly 1 in every 5 deals. This isn't just bad luck. It's a baked-in reality of the market that we all need to be prepared for.
And the financial stakes? They're huge. The average gap that agents are forced to navigate is somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000. That is a massive number to try and bridge when emotions are running high and you're up against a tight deadline.
So why does this keep happening? Well, first, the typical CMA, the comparative market analysis, is really a sales tool. It's designed to convince a seller to list with you, not to withstand the intense scrutiny of an appraiser or a lender. Second, all the critical details, like why one comp was way better than another, or the subtle things about the neighborhood, the specific condition of the home, all of that brilliant analysis lives up here, in your head, not on paper, where it needs to be. And because of those two things, the rebuttal ends up being this frantic, last-minute scramble instead of a calm, pre-planned defense.
But look, it doesn't have to be this way. It really doesn't. We can absolutely transform this crisis into a methodical negotiation. The whole key is to shift your mindset.
And here is the single most crucial point. An appraisal gap isn't the end of the deal. It's the beginning of a negotiation. But you can't negotiate without leverage, right? And in this game, documentation is your leverage.
A winning rebuttal package is a professional, evidence-based argument. You start by respectfully reviewing the original appraisal for any potential errors. Then, you provide superior comps, the ones the appraiser might have missed. You have to meticulously document any differences in property condition, detail those crucial neighborhood factors, and most importantly, justify every single choice you made. Explain why your comps paint a more accurate picture of that property's true value.
Okay, so submitting a rebuttal is one thing, actually winning one is another thing entirely. The data shows a really clear dividing line between success and failure. So let's take a look at what it actually takes to be in that winning group. Now, this presents both a challenge and, I think, a huge opportunity. While, nearly 60% of rebuttals fail, a really significant 41% succeed. So, overturning a low appraisal is definitely difficult, but it is far from impossible. Success is totally achievable for those who approach it the right way. So what separates that winning 41%? Well, winning rebuttals are built on a solid foundation of objective data, a clearly documented analysis of the comps, and detailed agent commentary that explains the why behind all the numbers. On the flip side, losing arguments, they tend to rely on emotional pleas, comps that don't quite fit, and just a fundamental lack of hard evidence to back up that contract price. And this brings us to what I think is the most important reframe of this entire process. What if the work you did to win the listing was the exact same work you needed to save the deal down the road?
So let's define a new term here, the proactive CMA. Now, this isn't your standard CMA. You can think of it as a rebuttal document in disguise, something you create at the very beginning of the process. Its primary audience isn't just the seller, it's a future appraiser. Because when you build your CMA this way, from the very start, the rebuttal practically writes itself. There's no frantic scramble, because the evidence has already been gathered, organized, and documented from day one.
So, what does a rebuttal-ready CMA actually look like in practice? Well, here's a quick checklist. It needs your detailed commentary on each and every comp. It needs your explicit reasoning for selecting and rejecting comps. It needs specific notes on property conditions and those unique neighborhood factors. And it needs a totally transparent breakdown of how you got to that final price.
So the whole point is that the original CMA is no longer just a sales tool. It becomes your primary piece of evidence. It's the file you calmly open when that dreaded phone call finally comes in.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What would change in your business, and frankly, in your stress levels, if your documentation was always rebuttal ready from the very first day you took on a new listing?
You know, this proactive mindset is now being built directly into modern tools. Systems like CMA Flow are designed around this very principle, with features like agent commentary and a confidence assessment that create this rebuttal-ready documentation automatically as you're building your original pricing strategy. It makes being prepared the default, not the exception.
So, with your evidence-packed document ready to go, you can manage the crisis like a true professional. Your formal rebuttal goes to the lender, presenting a clear, data-driven case. And at the same time, you use clear, consistent communication to keep your clients informed and confident. Because in the end, this kind of preparation, it isn't just about winning an argument, it's about protecting the relationship.